Suffering is quite a large part of cycling. No matter how fit you get in cycling, it always hurts. You just go faster.
Suffering is something you can improve on. Some people have the ability to suffer and go very, very deep, while others just don't have it quite the same. Improve your ability to suffer and therefore go faster, further and longer.
Concentrate on the wheel and you'll find that you're not thinking about other things such as perhaps the pain in your legs. Do bear in mind though, that you still need to look at where you're going. Simply looking at the wheel in front of you and nothing else is a surefire way of falling off.
This technique is particularly useful when you're not necessarily going hard, more having to endure really severe weather conditions, the pouring rain, the freezing cold, or that last 10 miles home into a block headwind. Try and think of something else to take your mind off the job at hand. Could be a nice hot bath, a steaming cup of hot chocolate, and we've even heard of some people actually counting their own pedal revolutions. 1, 2, 3.
We think there's a distinction between good pain and bad pain, and that actually you can influence how you respond to it just by a bit of positive thinking. So instead of focusing on how much something's hurting, why not instead think about how fast you're going, or how far you've gone, or how much you're making everyone else suffer.
It's a great tool to help you mentally prepare for something which could possibly hurt. We personally find it very useful before we head out on a high intensity interval training session where we've really got to hurt ourselves. Now you can go about this one of two ways. You can either think back to a previous race or similar training session where you've really nailed it, or you can simply imagine yourself perfectly accomplishing the goals that you've set out to achieve.
You just really enjoy looking at your ride data on your Garmin. It can sometimes get easy to fixate on the numbers, and even the very best riders in the world have days where the numbers just aren't telling them what they want to read. So in those instances, you just have to block it out, because actually having a reminder, a negative reminder of the suffering that you're going through, can actually impact on your ability to suffer.
It's all too easy to avoid the most difficult part of cycling, and that's going hard and suffering. So be disciplined and plan ahead. Plan your suffering.
Don't let the elements defeat you. Instead, try to think of them from a positive point of view and how they might be benefiting you. They're all credits going into your suffer bank that you can use at a later date.
You can't be expected to suffer in a sportive or a race if you don't suffer out in training. So it's important that you practice it. Now, if you find it hard to push yourself and suffer whilst training on your own, try and join up with a group of riders that are stronger than you.
And you always have to remember that other people are going to be suffering as well. Why not actually go and look at their faces? You can see the suffering etched in it, or in fact you can just laugh at their poker face as they're trying to hide it. Other people suffering around you will lower your own sense of pain.
Take a break, refocus, get your mind refreshed so you can get back to suffering as soon as possible.
Ride your bike enough, and before long you just might end up getting a saddle sore. What is a saddle sore? Well, there's two types. There's chafage, which just comes from repeated rubbing of the skin, and then you get spots or boils, which are actually bacterial skin infections, and they are way, way worse. And to combat chafage, the first thing to do is to buy a pair of cycling shorts that have got a pad in them. Now, first of all, they need to be tight enough on your legs. If they're not, then you end up with bunched up fabric, which is really, really bad at causing chafage. You want things to be snug and not flapping around. I mean the fabric shouldn't be flapping around. Don't wear underwear underneath your shorts. This obviously reduces chances of chafage and bunching up of fabric. Wash your shorts after every single ride. Don't sit in your shorts for hours. Get them off as soon as you finish and have a shower. You reduce your chances of getting those really painful boils. Now, if you're suffering from persistent problems, you should probably take a look at your bike setup. It might be something instead like your saddle height. Now, if it's too high, your hips will rock in the seat, which causes your ass to move from side to side and therefore cause that horrific chafage. So potentially, if you lower your seat, it'll stabilise your hips. Many people turn to chamois cream if they're suffering from saddle sores, and it does a great job of making things more comfortable by reducing friction on the area. Now, you can either apply it directly to your shorts or to your skin, or potentially both. I tend to go direct to skin because I hate the feeling of pulling on cold, damp, wet chamois. If you turn up on a ride and you've forgotten some and you're relying on a friend's pot to borrow, whatever you do, don't double dip. Now by that I mean dip, apply, dip, apply. It's just all kinds of wrong. So now boils are a bit more complicated, and in fact sometimes need a course of antibiotics if they're actually really lingering, or in the worst case, surgery. There's no need to shave your balls. Not for saddle soreness anyway. A guy near me actually tried hair removal cream on his nuts. They turned bright red and shriveled up. Hairless, but shriveled. And he still got saddle sores.
Call it what you will, bottom, ass, rear or rump. A sore bottom is a sad bottom. Here's GCN's top 10 tips to not getting a sore ass.
Let's be honest, sitting or lying down is sometimes the preferred option, especially after a long, arduous day in the saddle with some terrible weather thrown into. Give your ass some downtime. It'll love you more and look after you when you need it most.
Undies have no chamois protection between your saddle and your rear and are not fashioned out of a material, be it cotton or silk, that is supposed to be cycled in. If worn between you and your shorts, they'll ruck up and chafe and leave you smarting and sore for days.
Cycling shorts are tight for a reason, and that reason is so you don't get friction burns on your most delicate areas. So make sure you get the right shorts for maximum benefit. Too tight, they're going to dig into some of the areas you don't want them digging into, and too loose, and they'll be sliding around on your undercarriage like a duck on a frozen pond, and a rather itchy frozen pond due to chafing on an epic scale.
If you don't want your patootie to start looking like the face of the moon, then clean your shorts. Exposing your skin to weeks worth of sweat, grime and goodness knows what else is going to lead to a bumpy and uncomfortable ride. And by bumpy, we mean scabby.
So called because in years gone by, it was used to protect one's undercarriage from the rather harsh chamois leather that was used as shorts back in the day. A sort of adult nappy cream, really.
One of the best ways to avoid having a sore derriere is to avoid getting a wet derriere. There are loads of different shapes and sizes of saddles on the market these days. Bear in mind though, when you are in the market for a new saddle, that just because it looks comfortable doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Conversely, some of those wafer thin saddles that look like they're going to be about as comfortable as sitting on a pin might actually suit you. Probably not the first thing that you're going to think about. Putting more power through the pedals will mean that there's more weight taken by your legs, less by your bum.
There are a couple of left field options, is to get a cushion reasonably sized and strap it using whatever method you have to hand to your mate's posterior or indeed your own. That should work a treat.
What is option number 2?
Well, option 2 is slightly different. You basically get a similar size cushion if you have one to hand. But what you do is basically stuff it down your shorts.
Oh, blimey, that's so comfortable. I don't know why people haven't thought of this before, Dan. Yeah, there we go.
When it comes down to it, there really is no way to make your ride completely comfortable.
Hours spent on the saddle every day for years on end. Eventually your caboose will just get used to the torture that you put it through on a daily basis, and you'll think back and wonder what all the fuss was about.